For decades, Saudis and Yemenis have lived in close community, united by brotherly social and cultural ties, as well as by similar political and economic interests. In 2014, the capital of Sana'a was invaded by armed militias, plunging the Republic of Yemen into an escalating political crisis, which has resulted in serious human rights violations and the restriction of personal freedoms. The work of the constitutional government was disrupted. Neighborhoods and hospitals were bombed. Women and children were displaced.
جانا التفكير انه هاجرنا كلنا هاجرنا من اليمن لانه الاوضاع مأساة وصعبة جدا العيشة فيها.
Saudi Arabia has welcomed around 1 million Yemeni refugees, out of which 600,000 remained in Saudi Arabia and were granted visitor IDs, which allow them to work, to receive health care, be educated, and to benefit from other public services. On May 13, 2015, King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center was established to provide aid and relief for those in need around the world. Since that date, a month doesn't go by without KS Relief's finishing a number of projects to help Yemenis. So far, the center has been involved in 153 humanitarian aid and relief projects in Yemen. Thanks to KS Relief, 12,000 displaced Yemenis have returned to their homes and families, and thousands of expatriates who were in Yemen when the conflict began have been returned to their home countries. Supplying displaced persons living in remote areas with drinking water, thousands of food baskets, and other life-saving assistance. Rehabilitating major hospitals negatively impacted by the ongoing conflict, covering the treatment costs of hundreds of ill and wounded patients, and carrying out the medical evacuations of hundreds of critical cases in need of advanced medical care. Many young Yemenis were recruited by armed militias to fight in the conflict. KS Relief funded a project to transport these child soldiers to secure areas of Yemen in order to care for, rehabilitate, and integrate them into their communities. KS Relief established a prosthetic center in Ma'rib to help the hundreds of people who have lost their limbs because of anti-personnel mines. Despite the fact that Saudi Arabia has incurred ballistic missile attacks launched from Sada and Hajjah, located near the Saudi-Yemeni border, Saudi Arabia has continued through KS Relief to support the two largest hospitals in these governorates. These facilities provide medical services to 620,000 Yemeni citizens. Emergency preparedness and relief are two important aspects of KS Relief's work. For example, within hours after the siege of Aden was broken, KS Relief was able to provide swift emergency relief by air and sea. In Taiz, Houthi militias have imposed a cruel siege for more than 2 years, confiscating food, medicine, and oxygen cylinders, and intensively shelling residential areas and hospitals, many of which were heavily damaged. KS Relief used airdrops to deliver food aid to Yemenis who were cut off from the outside world. In areas where the terrain was rough, KS Relief transported oxygen cylinders using primitive modes of transport, such as pack animals, to save the lives of the sick and wounded. KS Relief provided millions of food baskets right to the front steps of the homes of people in need. Despite the many risks involved in implementing humanitarian projects on the ground in Yemen, KS Relief has nonetheless formed partnerships with 86 local and international organizations and local governmental entities in Yemen to provide help to millions of Yemenis.
I think that this represents a good example in delivering humanitarian relief.
KS Relief responded to the WHO's announcement of the outbreak of cholera in Yemen by dispatching, within just a few days, a large convoy of medical aid to treat the epidemic. This medical aid was distributed to all Yemeni governments in cooperation with international organizations and the Yemeni Ministry of Public Health and Population. Although KS Relief had previously provided $8.2 million US to control the causes of cholera in Yemen, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman directed KS Relief to provide an additional amount of $66.7 million US to respond to the appeals of other international organizations fighting the cholera epidemic in Yemen.
I would like to express our warm appreciation and gratitude for this generous contribution that has been made by the government of Saudi Arabia. The pledge to give this $66.7 million US to both UNICEF and WHO.
Yemen and its people have been the focus of many of KS Relief's projects. Indeed, 66% of the center's programs have been implemented in Yemen at a total cost of $700 million US. KS Relief's mission is to provide humanitarian relief to the Yemeni people and to provide support for affected vital facilities and hospitals. The tears of children, women, and the elderly are transformed to smiles when their pain is alleviated and their hope is restored, that their Yemen will one day be restored to them.